Crying wolf may have been the boy's undoing, but the true irony in that story, the boy who cried wolf, was that the wolves were always lurking nearby. Now, what nobody ever asks is, why were the wolves lurking nearby? It's kind of assumed that wolves love sheep. They are delicious, are they not? Can you blame the wolf? And from the sheep's perspective, shouldn't they have been petitioning the shepherd to say, please cry human? Because they're the ones who are going to come eventually take us. And when we're done providing wool, they're going to eat us. So one way or the other, the sheep were going to be eaten, whether by a wolf or by a human. Most people don't think about that. But of course, it's battlefield of the mind stuff. And some are probably asking, okay, great story, Maki. What does this have to do with anything going on? Well, Washington, D.C. and others have cried wolf one too many times, and nobody is listening. Now, if you'd like to join us for further battlefield of the mind, psychological operations videos, we would love to have you at the Florida Maki Patreon channel, where it's only one single US dollar per month. Even less if you sign up for an entire year, and fully refundable first 90 days, no questions asked. For the first 90 days, you really have nothing to lose, unlike the sheep. Now let's get right to it. What if I told you that the governor of Florida red-pilled the governor of California? Somebody like, wait a minute, what are you talking about? How many of you remember so long ago when Governor DeSantis and Governor Newsom did a debate? And they went back and forth over the state of Florida versus the state of California and the relative different political directions they've taken. Now, I don't think anybody out there, anybody with a reasonable mind, would say that California did it better. For sure. Especially post-2020. And there's evidence now that Mr. Newsom has had kind of a wake-up call. But that's going to kind of mess with some people's minds a little bit in a way that I don't think they're going to be able to accept. Some people look at Gavin Newsom and they have one opinion, and that opinion is very easy to have. You form a singular opinion of someone, and then that's it. They never change, and any possible evidence that they could be changing is dismissed because that's cognitive dissonance, and there's other things that go along with that we talk about more extensively at the Patreon channel. But what if I told you it was all tied to a story in Venezuela? You see, the U.S. has cried wolf, election cheating, one too many times, and nobody is believing them. Some people might think, well, maybe there's something to it, but one thing's for sure, we can't trust Washington, D.C. I know I'm going a lot of places here, but it's all kind of tied together, really. How many of you have sat around with friends and war gamed the idea of zombie apocalypse, of end of the world, some event happens and we're all thrown back 100, 200 years, and there's no technology, and you've got to figure out a way to get with a group and survive. Now, some, they envision something as simple as this. You've got a lantern, a couple of cold drinks, you got a deck of cards, some cigarettes, and you've got a little bit of shelter here just to keep you out of the wind. Some people envision things much more extensive, underground bunkers, outfitted with, basically everything you could to survive. Definitely all sorts of different interpretations. A lot of the images that you're seeing are from YouTube, and there are channels where you can go to, and they have ambient sound and this picture, and a lot of people have romanticized this idea of end of the world, post-apocalypse, and it gives them peace and comfort knowing that all governments have collapsed and it's just survival of the fittest. Now, those who are in this group of people, in one sense of their mind, they enjoy this, but in another sense of their mind, they don't want this to happen. And they flip back and forth, and they don't see the contradiction. Here's the contradiction. Here's how it works. Gavin Newsom, those of you who haven't heard, has decided to now put his foot down with all of the homeless encampments in California. And he's actually gone out himself and got the gloves on, got the boots on, and gone out with the crews to, some say it's a photo op, but, he's working his ass off out there. I mean, he was saying, look, this is it. Any city, any locality that doesn't get on board with cleaning this kind of crap up and getting involved in fixing this problem, we're going to cut funding to. Now, that's an interesting thing because you look at an actual homeless encampment versus zombie apocalypse survival, and you start to see things that are very close. That's interesting. Now, some might say, Florida Maki, it's all an act. It's all an act. The man is 56 years old. He's 56 years old. He's been a liberal his whole life. It's all photo op. It's not real. People that age don't change. People that age don't change. How many of you know who the woman on the right is? That's his ex-wife, Kimberly Guilfoyle. Florida Maki, wait a minute. That they were married? They sure were. They're actually both a couple years older than I am. Mid-50s, mid to late 50s. And she is now married to a guy 12 years younger, Donald Trump's oldest son, Donald Trump Jr. Now that seems like one heck of a swing, don't you think? From the politics and the beliefs of this guy to the politics and the beliefs of this guy, especially even at her age. What caused the swing? What caused the change? And was there really? See, this is the boy who cried wolf thing. Was there really a change? Because at the time when she came to West Palm Beach was very liberal, very Democrat oriented. So did she change? Or did she not? Or is it just an illusion of the wolf? Is it just an illusion of the wolf? Because remember in the story, the boy who cried wolf, he was right once. He was right once. I found some pictures I think that you'll be interested to see, because those of you who don't believe Gavin Newsom at 56, being a liberal governor, Democrat governor of California, can change. Here's Donald Trump when he was 59. Recently having married his wife, Melania. And here's him posing with 50 Cent in the background. And somebody else up here in the corner. I think all of you know who that is. And P. Diddy. And Naomi Campbell. And Al Sharpton. And Russell Simmons. Russell Simmons' wife. Venus and Serena Williams. And yes, your eyes do not deceive you, Star Jones. Now that's an interesting picture to take, isn't it? Look how happy everybody is. See here, he's only a few years older than Gavin Newsom. With his pink tie, his liberal friends, his liberal Democrat friends. It's an interesting thing, isn't it? Florida Maki, you talk about Venezuela a lot. And if it's so great, why are so many people coming? Why are so many people? It's an interesting thing when people don't understand how math works. Yes, there have been thousands, tens of thousands, perhaps, that have come. Some have said millions, but nobody ever accounts for how many come here, realize they have to pay for everything, and then turn around and go back. See, there's no statistics covering that. You got to look at other media. Now, here is my question. 9 minutes and 15 seconds into everybody who thinks that I have a completely myopic or weird opinion about this. I thought it was the Democrat Party going down and giving money and promising all of these wonderful government socialist programs to these people to get them to come here to vote. That's right, Maki. The Democrats are doing that. They're giving money to these people. They're going down and bribing them, and they're coming here and they're giving them voter ID cards. And okay, so they're going to an area where you say socialism is so bad and so terrible and horrible that people are leaving spontaneously but being bribed to go to someplace else that they're being promised socialism? Well, wait, that's not... Well, yeah, that's exactly what you're saying. What you're saying is that down here in South America, there's a whole bunch of people that are just sick and tired of socialism completely. And they decided to pack up spontaneously because of the failure of socialist governments down here. And they are walking here because they want to go to the promise of what in the United States? Capitalism? Is that what the Democrats who are giving them all this money promising them? Is it promising them capitalism? Do the Democrats promise capitalism will solve their problems? No. So they're promising them more of what they're supposedly spontaneously leaving. You see, people don't get it, do they? That's the point, is that the direct contradiction does not register in their minds to say that they're spontaneously leaving all these countries because of evil, terrible, horrible socialism, but then the Democrats are also paying them to come here for more socialism. The reason people don't see that is because of emotion. They get emotionally attached to some news blurb and or some person who supports a certain news organization. And anything then that they say, regardless of how contradictory it is, they're just going to agree with because it agrees with the emotion they're feeling at the time. Now, great story here. Washington's web of lies is backfiring over Venezuela. Even if Maduro stole the election, no one would believe the U.S. anyway. Boy, who cried wolf? The 2024 presidential election in Venezuela, held on July 28, has stirred international concern, much like the preceding elections in the Caribbean state. A clear divide has emerged, with the United States and its allies predictably supporting the opposition, while countries in the emerging multipolar world order are backing President Nicolas Maduro. In much the same way that the U.S. and its allies have disputed the legitimacy of Maduro's presidency since the 2018 election and Chavez before that, spurring an artificial presidential crisis with former opposition leader Juan Guaido, random guy named Juan, recognized by Washington as the legitimate president, the West is doing this again with now former diplomat Edmundo Gonzalez. The opposition has released copies of official tally sheets collected by poll watchers from most of the nation's polling centers. The sheets show apparently some landslide victory of 80% for Gonzalez, a claim that is now being widely circulated and amplified by the lying Western media. Meanwhile, the results released by the National Electoral Council show a narrow victory for Maduro with 52%, resulting in opposition protests. The Venezuelan government has criminalized such demonstrations and moved to stamp down opposition leaders. Given the state of the Venezuelan economy and widespread poverty, it's not outside the realm of basic reason that Maduro could have possibly actually lost. Researchers, including Steve Levitsky, an expert on democracy at Harvard, you see, this is the part where everybody's going to read over that because it's going to tell them something that agrees with their current emotional state. An expert on democracy at Harvard University have also noted how improbable the official results are. He told the New York Times that this recent vote is, quote, one of the most egregious electoral frauds in modern Latin American history, pot calling the kettle black. But others disagree. Dennis Rogachik, a reporter with El Ciudadano, who covered the election for the independent media platform, told RT the days preceding the election showed a monumental advantage that Nicolas Maduro and the PUSV, that's their party, had over the opposition in terms of manpower and the sheer strength of its electoral mobilization. The closing rallies for President Maduro drew in crowds 6 to 7 times larger than those of Gonzalez and Machado, Marina Cachina Machado. Now, how many of you seen the Trump rallies? And it was evidence, the Trump rallies were evidence that what happened in 2020 couldn't possibly have been correct. Well, here was the same thing. And the second bulletin released by CNN on August 2nd showed 6.4 million-ish votes for Maduro. And that aligns perfectly well with the combined membership of the PUSV and its allied parties at just over 6 million. So everybody who is basically registered in support of President Maduro voted. and he won 52 to 48. He won 52 to 48. But the opposition and the Western media wants you to believe that he lost 80-20. Now, here's where it gets even better. Ready for this? However, the more interesting dynamic with regard to the situation in Venezuela is the fact that the U.S. is failing to garner the requisite support needed to apply the pressure it wants on Caracas. It shows a dwindling of American soft power in what once was considered the empire's backyard. The three most prominent countries in the region, Brazil, Mexico, and Colombia, have not condemned Maduro. In fact, the Organization of American States, which had previously passed a resolution against Morales in 2019, the leader of Bolivia, another socialist country, failed to pass a resolution over the situation in Venezuela. While 17 members voted to condemn Maduro, 11 abstained, including Brazil and Colombia, and 5 delegations, including Mexico, skipped the session altogether. Even the EU couldn't put together a resolution to condemn this. What we see here is a classic case of the boy who cried wolf. The U.S. has continually cried wolf over alleged breakdowns of the democracy in Latin America, using its soft power, blah, blah, blah. Everybody knows what's going on. Everybody knows what's going on. I'll ask it again. If all of these people were leaving these countries spontaneously based on the failure of socialism in those countries, how in the world would it behoove them to go to another socialist country coming here to, quote, vote for Democrats who want to do a very different kind of socialism, mind you? But sometimes education gets kind of lost in the translation here. The difference between pumping oil out of the ground and instead of handing it over to billionaires, all the profits, taking that money, selling it on the open market, doing everything you can to keep the price of that high so that you have a lot of money coming in and you use that money to finance the government so you don't have to tax the crap out of people. The socialism they want to do in Washington, D.C. still requires taxing the crap out of people and still requires there being large corporations controlling everything. They don't want to actually get down to the nuts and bolts of what would actually hand power back to the American people. They still want there to be big corporations to decry and capitalism to decry, and they just want to tax the hell out of people and what they earn instead of actually just selling commodities that we produce right here in this country. And then based on the sales of those things around the world, financing the government. Like they do in Venezuela, like they do in Mexico, like they do in Colombia, like they do in Brazil, like they do in Finland, like they do in Canada, like they do in all sorts of other places. You look at these numbers, and let's say you're even right about 1 million, 2 million, 3 million. Okay. Do the math. Mexico, Central America, the Caribbean, and South America. 680 million people. 680 million people. And you're talking about 3 or 4 million? Hell, let's say even 5. You know what you're talking about? You're talking about 1%. 5 million people would be 1% of the population of basically what you would call Latin Spanish-speaking countries in this hemisphere. Think about that for just 1 minute. There's about 1 billion people living in the Western Hemisphere. About 400 million between Canada and the United States. The other 600 million or so down here. 99% of them are staying put. And the rest of the ones that are coming here, the lowest income 1%, it's a very odd thing to try to discern why. Because you have these, of course, and they get all sorts of camera time. People say, we came from countries that were socialist, and we came from blah, 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 and we know what it is. If that's the case, and that's the reason they're here, this whole story about the Democrats giving them money to come here for more socialism is kind of bunk. Isn't it? It's kind of bunk. And the reason that I tied it to this story with Gavin Newsom is because, in the personal sense, did Kimberly Guilfoyle really go from being red-pilled with being married to Gavin Newsom and then all of a sudden seeing the light of true conservatives and how much better they are to Donald Trump Jr.? You see, when this all went down, they were still liberals. You see, at the time that they got together, they were all still Democrats and liberals. You see, unlike Ron DeSantis, who has never been a liberal, never been a Democrat, never palled around with P. Diddy, never palled around with Star Jones, or all the liberal pals. This was the first time I think Gavin Newsom actually went face to face with a real, actual, true conservative who had a command of the facts. And he got red-pilled. It's just like this idea of homeless encampments versus survival bunkers. Potato, potato. Potato, potato. I mean, imagine you came and you had your survival bunker, and all of a sudden a bunch of government authorities swooped in and knocked it all down and kicked it all over and threw it all away. I mean, it sounds zombie apocalypse to me. It's an interesting thing to see the change in the behavior, too, by the way, of her when she was on Gavin Newsom's arm and then now on this guy's arm. It's kind of weird, though, that your girlfriend is 2 years older than your stepmom. Just saying. Florida, confirmed. It's not uncommon down here. So, anyway, I guess I will leave it there. But yeah, I'm sure a lot of people were probably stunned to see Paris Hilton in the same picture at... Oh, and this, by the way, this was a West Palm Beach honors the life of P. Diddy, hosted at Mar-a-Lago. And that's what you're looking at here. That's what these pictures are from. Art Life was involved in this. Denzel Washington was involved in this. So, don't think you're looking at a bunch of conservatives. And to look at this, you would have to then ask that weird question, wouldn't you? Well, are they conservatives who have seen the light about capitalism and that's why they're spontaneously leaving? Or do they just, want the money for, they weren't socialist enough, I guess, where they came from, and they wanted yet even more socialism in North America because that's what the Democrats would promise them. So they really love socialism, so that's why they're coming to America. Which is it? It can't be both. Things you won't hear on the news. God bless. Battlefield of the mind. You've got to deduct the emotion, delete it, to see the truth. Love to have you at the Patreon channel. Would make a huge difference in my life. I'm not going to lie. These, a lot of your favorite channels, you're probably hearing less and less and less from. Because these platforms are not what they were 2015, 16, 17. It's a completely different thing. And a lot of us who took the plunge and decided to center our lives around this are having to adapt. And we're going through a zombie apocalypse of our own. So if you can, spare $1, one single dollar per month. Hundreds and hundreds of videos over there for it. Would very, very much like to see a larger crowd over there. We have a really good crowd. God bless all of you who have. But we always can open up the folding chairs and back, so to speak. God bless. Pray for each other. Pray for me. I'll pray for you. Lift each other up. Like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.